There are only a couple of events each year in the off-campus student housing industry that bring all of the industry leaders together. The premier event for the industry is the Interface Student Housing Conference in Austin, Texas. For 2024, this event was held in late April and brought over 1,400 attendees and a complete who's who's list of executives from student housing firms from around the country under one roof at the JW Marriott in Austin for 3 days of sessions, roundtables, and networking. Student Housing Insight took the opportunity to sit down with several industry executives to discuss their thoughts on the future of the industry and challenges that lay ahead. So buckle up for some amazing insight. This is Student Housing Insight's Future of Student Housing episode. Well, guys, welcome to, I guess, the 6th annual Student Housing Insight on-site live podcast at Interface. We've got a pretty big crowd here today. Everybody give yourself a round of applause. Well, I've got a fantastic group of operators here that I want to talk about the future of student housing operations, and I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Brandon, we'll start with you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Brandon Smith. I'm the Vice President of Operations and Development at Tailwind Group. We are based out of Mankato, Minnesota. Started acquiring in the space in 2016, and we have about 15,000 beds under management.
Good morning, Stacy Lakoki with Asset Living. I'm the division president over our student portfolio. I've been with Asset about 9 years, and I've been in the overall space of student housing for 24 years, and we currently have about 115,000 beds under management.
Good morning, Tasha Bowles with American Campus Communities. I have been with American Campus for about 23 years. Started out at one of our first communities out at Prairie View A&M University. Currently, we have about 140,000 beds under ownership and management.
Morning, everyone. Matt Maxa, COO of Article Student Living. We've got about 23,000 beds under ownership and management, and I've been in student housing for this will be 21 years.
So did anybody add all that up?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I forgot to do that part, but I'm the only one without notes, so good start.
Well, guys, you know, I'm gonna make a comment, but I'll just anyway. You know, in preparing for this call, I asked you that question. You know, what is or preparing for this podcast? Excuse me. I asked you that question of what's keeping you up at night, and overwhelmingly, you guys all said your people. Do we have people in the right seats? Are they getting the support that they need? And thinking about that coming away from that Zoom call, I really wanted to ask you guys this first question. When it comes to leadership, you know, what are the things that you feel like you could be doing better in preparing leaders? Where do you guys stand with when it comes to the future leadership of your organizations and those that you've got around you?
Can we go first?
Sure.
You know, for us, it's just making sure that they have a diverse skill set, you know, the technical expertise as well as the soft skills like communication and adaptability and empathy. And so it's just really focusing all of our development efforts around that. And one of the ways that we do that is through mentorship programs, because we really believe in fostering, you know, an arena or an environment of collaboration and just, you know, using our internal resources to develop our employees. But really it's making sure that we have well-rounded leaders, because we often find that they're either great operators, but, you know, maybe don't have the empathy skills or vice versa. So it's just really investing the resources in that. And I think one of the reasons that we said, you know, people, it keeps us up at night, because you can have the best strategies, business plans, marketing plans, all those things, but without the people to execute it, they really are meaningless.
Yeah. Brandon?
Yeah, I think the challenge is just being really intentional about leadership training and development. All of our organizations are growing super rapidly and, you know, focused on growth, acquisition, things like that. You can kind of get lost in that, and, you know, setting aside intentional, you know, development efforts and training with your people. That's the challenge. It's really important, and we all agree it is, but we also have a ton going on all the time. I'd say the second part is patience, and, you know, leadership development takes a really long time. It's actually a never-ending thing. I mean, you're always moving forward somewhere. But, we see, especially at Tailwind, as we've grown from really rapidly over the last 5 years, a lot of our early employees were getting promoted really quickly and growing very quickly. And then as you start to scale and get a little bigger, those timelines decrease or increase. So just keeping people, level in the role that they're in right now, but also developing them for what is next. And, having a realistic path as to what that looks like is something we're focusing on and important.
When you think about that growth that you guys have had and some of the folks that, were kind of there from the start with that, is it, I've seen that in organizations before where that, that initial crew is, kind of tried and true, the folks that you trust and believe in. And I'm just kind of curious, as you guys are getting bigger and you're bringing more folks in, how much are you leaning on that kind of that original crew to, I guess, be a mentor is not the word I'm looking for, but to try to instill that trust and leadership in those new folks? Yeah,
a significant amount. I mean, I don't know the exact head count of our corporate team, but we ran the numbers. I think almost 70% of our corporate team started on our site level at some point and have moved up to there. And, that's important to us. We're growing our talent from within, and, 2 people here today started as property managers with us and are now director level leaders in the company. And that's how we want to continue to grow. Of course, there's always, hiring and recruiting from the outside, but we rely on them heavily. I mean, to, lead the culture that we're trying to build and the core values that we have. And I think it's great to see for, property level employees that there is opportunity for me, even as a leasing manager or a property manager, that if I do the right things, there's a path at Tailwind to get to a, traveling job or a corporate job, things like that. And, that's why we've put such a focus on it.
Tasha, you guys don't have any challenges at ACC at all, do you? There's no changes that have been happening there or anything, right?
Yeah, no, as we have challenges. And, when I think about challenges in developing our leaders, I think about it in a couple different things. One, are we, just as Brandon said, are we dedicating the time that's needed to developing our leaders? Like, are we being very intentional about that time? Going back to the basics of doing things like our regular one-on-one meetings with them, with our leaders that we're developing, also sponsoring and mentoring, which that's 2 different things, but making sure that we're doing those things as well. And then I think, sharing our talents with them as well, at all levels. And so making sure that our leaders have the opportunity to be exposed to other leaders within the organization, and have those training opportunities with them as well, exposing them to other parts of the business, not just the ones that they're in currently. And then
can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what does that actually look like?
So for us, I would say, one of the things that we do is our Inside Track program, which this year we actually celebrate 20 years of Inside Track. And I was part of that original class. I was only like 10 then. But in our Inside Track program, we bring in people, our employees from the field who we've identified as leaders. And then we do intentional training with them for a week. We bring them actually here to Austin, do intentional training with them, expose them to every aspect of the business. And then after that, we send them back in the field, but we don't just put them back out. Like, we give them the resources over the next year to learn more about the business and be very intentional with that training, with the hopes that within a 6 to 18 months, they're ready to move to that next level.
Okay. So how about an article? Any challenges on?
No, we're great. No, it's really very similar stories, right? I think from a leadership standpoint, we all talked about how the path, a lot of our people are very similar to ours. They started on property and kind of worked their ways up. So to me, whether it's at our conferences, our leadership conferences that we hold, whether intentional or organic, it's sharing the journey. I think our journey matters to them because it allows them to see a growth pattern, even in the moments when they're impatient, which is overwhelming right now in the space, the impatience at the property level. I know I've got people that have, did a lease up successfully and then all of a sudden they're ready to be regional manager. That's not a thing. I think for us, it's more about how do we tell them the career pathing how long that takes, what it took for us to get there. It may be shortened for them or compressed, which is great, but it's a function of the macro as well as the micro in the space. And I'd also add that for a lot of our leaders, devoting time, like everybody talked about, sponsorship, mentorship, devoting time to our people. When we go to conferences, having those organic interactions, just talking through everything that we have done, and also just being there for people. I think we can say a lot of like fancy things, but it's just being accessible as a leader in the organization. Then our leaders doing the same thing. And then the last thing I'd add is when we have our trainings, right, the follow-up is super important. I think the training is key in the beginning, but you just mentioned it's the next step, right? What do we do after that? How are we promoting that person to the next level? And are we supporting them in the next 1 or 2 years to set up for success? Because just giving them the tools in a 3 or 4 day period and some handouts later, some emails, that's not really going to change their career path. But I do think that if we continue to follow up and build them up, they essentially become somebody at our home office who then again is continuing on that process of building the next generation of leader.
Yeah. Let me ask you this on leaders, because, you guys have talked a lot about, kind of preparing them for the next step and, and mentoring others. The other part of leadership, I think, is, kind of outside of what is happening, within our firms and within our portfolios, but, actually taking a lot of these associates that we've hired and actually, turning them into a leader or helping them become a leader within their community and, kind of in a broader sense of it. Are you guys doing anything from that standpoint to, help associates that maybe, have never done that kind of self-help type of that leadership training, on their own?
Yeah, it's a financial investment. Clearly, I think we have the conferences, but I think the financial investment in like the local market, hyper local, like whether it's our culture committees, our engagement committees, morale committees, that is not just a home office engagement. That is for everybody in an organization. So we do make it intentional. We keep using that word, but it's really important. I mean, we're intentional about how we reach out to our site teams and what they do and what the resources are available to them, whether that's from us or local resource that we can give connections to from a resident or a staffing standpoint from the university, or anything else that we share with the broader organization.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we've created culture committees too, because it's just the connectivity. We don't have brick and mortar, asset. We're just so diverse and, nationwide, but our associates out on site or even our regional manager teams, they're all remote. And so trying to bring everybody together to feel connected back to a hub, we created culture committees to help address that and, make a difference.
Yeah, that, for the two of you guys, I mean, what was it, 260,000 beds between the two of you, I think. That just, I mean, I don't know how you two guys feel about it, but it just blows me away how, you guys are able to kind of create these, almost like these cells within inside of the organization that are really, helping and promoting each other kind of outside of,
Yeah, I can't do it without my people. There's a common theme here. I mean, it really just comes back to the people that you have in place and their passion for doing good work and, making a difference in each other's lives. And that just sounds so cliche, but it's just so true. On my operational side, I have 5 SVPs that help me oversee the book of business. And I can't imagine doing this without them and just their expertise and their passion for what they do. It really, again, it's worth repeating. It comes down to the people.
Yeah. Anything else on that, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think 15,000 is really hard. So, to piggyback on that, it's, there's only so much one person can do and impact. So it's cascading that, mission and vision to that level below, who's responsible for cascading it to that level below. And it's all a consistent message and they're all hearing the same thing. You really have to rely on your next level leaders. If you want to grow. I mean, if you want to stay where you are, then you can do that. But if you want to continue to grow, you're going to have to, continue to build up that next level, and they got to build up the level below. And there's just a trust and reliance that we have to have on those people.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We can't talk about the future of student housing operations without talking about artificial intelligence. I don't want to get into the existential doom and gloom stuff of AI that I think those conversations typically lead to. I want to ask you guys, what is exciting to you guys about it? What is it that you guys get excited about AI, helping your people out from an operations standpoint? I don't know who wants to go first with that, but
I don't mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I say, at American Campus, we're excited about AI. We know that it is going to transform the business. I think we're still in like the learning phase of it right now and just really understanding AI and how we can integrate it into our current systems. But some of the ways in which we see that it could potentially be helpful, I know we talk a lot about like the front or student facing ways in which AI could be helpful, but we look at it from a behind the house way. So like thinking of like maintenance, like how we can help us improve like our preventative maintenance, also like our turn, and then things down to like our utilities as well.
Yeah. I think just the overarching theme is the efficiencies that it creates for our teams. Like when they do their Instagram posts, now they can use Chat GPT to come up with the cool caption rather than, sitting there trying to use their minutes to do that. So it's not, the conversations we're having around it is not that it's going to replace people. It's just to complement, using the technology to complement their current day and just help them focus on what matters most, the residents. So, we always tell our people as we're having these discussions, don't worry, it's not meant to replace you. It's meant to complement your day.
Yeah, it's giving time back. That's what it is, right? What are they great at? What do we want to focus on? Customer service, resident engagement, leasing apartments. And if they're more focused on reporting on a Monday afternoon they are leasing, and you notice that our leasing numbers aren't as strong on a Monday as they are on a Friday, there's a reason for that. While it's a little bit intangible, you can quantify and say there's probably a lot of work going on a Monday that isn't focused on what we want them to be focused on. So the more that we can take away and take off their plate and give them time back in their day to focus on what they're great at, that's what we're trying to do.
Going forth, there's probably not going to be usually a ton to add, but we're in the learning discovery phase. The market's getting flooded right now with so much different stuff. So you have to do your due diligence and make sure it integrates with your systems and your processes. Our focus would be, as we begin to implement and roll things out, what are the things that take a lot of time that aren't necessarily really skilled intensive? They're just time consuming, or that just suck the energy out of your teams. I think about like a lease file audit or something like that. Like you have to do them. No one really likes doing them. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to automate something like that and give those hours back and increase and improve morale, because now someone doesn't have to do that. Maybe it's just a spot check after it runs through that. So it's like they said, giving time back in the day to things that don't require, a personal touch and a human touch all the time.
Gotcha. So what kind of, outside of the administrative task, are there things that you guys see from not necessarily the site level, but more at the regional manager level, the asset management side? Do you guys, are you guys looking at how AI may be able to help you guys in those areas?
Sure. From an automation standpoint, yeah. I mean, I think it's a similar story, right? Because the reporting that is being fed into that is being read by somebody else, right? It's executive reporting, regional manager reporting, asset manager reporting. So automating that process to give those regionals time back in their day to oversee their portfolio, it's the same kind of concept, right? It's nothing groundbreaking, but I do think that time is invaluable, as there's a lot of pressure on expense loads for every organization. And I think the more that they can, from a scaling standpoint, can take on as a regional manager and be able to do that, the ability to have that happen comes from the automation and reporting and back-end functions.
Gotcha. Anybody else?
Well said.
I didn't prepare you guys for this question, but thinking of AI, and I like to do that, so you guys know that. But thinking about it from a marketing perspective, and some of the things that we're seeing now, with both video and still pictures, and how we can just take something from a simple narrative, and I did something back at during the Final Four of all the UNC Carolina fans breaking their ankles to get on the NC State bandwagon. And the picture that this AI rendered for me was really, really damn good. And, I'm just kind of curious, from a marketing standpoint, are you guys, a lot of that stuff, I don't know if it's kind of, if it's one of those things we really want to put into our marketing folks' hands right now, because there's so many issues with it. I'm just wondering if you guys are having any conversations about it.
We're doing some piloting, but I wouldn't say that, I have any specific feedback yet, but definitely, again, just using all those types of resources to create efficiencies and just focus on the other things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I say the same at American Campus. Like I said before, we're really just trying to understand AI and looking at the compliance of it all. So we have not, like in the leasing space, we have not experimented with any AI at this time.
Yeah.
Right now, it's not saving time, right? It's because it's a review process. We're in that initial stage where you're getting the Chat GPT, you're getting something that can be created by something else, but there's still a review process. So you don't trust it yet. And that's where I think a lot of these pieces are at with most organizations. And once it gets there, it will be great for everybody. But I think we're still in that test phase.
Yeah. So something you hit on, started to hit on earlier with your question on AI, is a little bit on centralization. I want to kind of move over to that because I think, I've got a panel that I'm moderating on Friday morning about centralization. I think you've got something that's kind of similar today or tomorrow. And, I think we've got Scott here who's from the UK and works with an operator there. And I met with him, I don't know, it's been 6-7 years ago now. And the UK was much further ahead of us as far as centralization was concerned at the time. And there was, I kind of came back from that and was kind of in everyone's ear of, hey, we really ought to start looking at doing this a different way. Maybe the way some of, I think we may have some folks from Granite in the room, but how they kind of take that scattered site model and centralize that. Maybe there's some efficiencies there. No one wanted to listen to me about it. And, a pandemic later and, everybody's all about centralization. And, but both with that and with AI, I probably toured, I want to say maybe 24 markets last year, probably 100, 120 properties, I would imagine. And I would say 90 to 95% of them were all, they were all, fully staffed. I'm just kind of curious from a centralization standpoint, the feedback I get back when someone tells me they're going into centralization or they're putting forward centralization efforts. The feedback I get back is, this isn't to reduce overhead. This is, to basically, allow those folks to provide a better resident experience. Every single one of those properties, had the fitness center. I don't know if we're still calling them state-of-the-art fitness centers or not, but they all had fitness centers. They all had study lounges and sand volleyball and swimming pools. And, we all know. I'm just kind of curious with that enhancing the resident experience because of centralization. What does that actually look like? What else are we going to be offering? Is it just someone waiting in a desk to answer something? What is that really freeing them up for?
I think when we talked about it during our prep call, for me, I have a college-age daughter, so my daughter is also a customer, and so I get to live through that and experience that. And it always amazes me, the fitness centers do matter to her and her friends, and the study areas, and the pool definitely matters. But after that, it's the resident relations, and it's kind of like to say what's old is new. I mean, she goes to all the scavenger hunts, the do-it-yourself workshops, the themed parties, the grocery bingo. And I really didn't think that my daughter would do that, but all of her sorority sisters, they go to every single one of those things, and she'll call me, I want a sweatshirt, or I won this, a $10 gift card. It's just so meaningful. And so it really does come back to the connectivity piece. She was a 2020 high school grad, so her high school experience and then her freshman year college experience was abbreviated and just different than what it should look like. And so we have this whole group of students that were impacted by what happened in 2020, and then all of the upcoming kids that were in middle school and entering high school were impacted by it. And so I really can witness through just my personal experience, and then of course in the workplace, that they just really crave that connectivity. And so I think using our teams to focus on resident relations is just really powerful.
Yeah.
I would just say to your point, like, what more could you do? So we are doing resident events and we're all doing, have great amenities, but what's the level of involvement with your on-site team in participating in those events? Because as a property manager, I've got financial calls and leasing calls and leadership calls and one-on-ones with my regional and inspections and maintenance. So typically, are they attending those events? Are they building relationship with the residents? So when we talk about resident experience, it's actually creating a more of a connectivity to our resident. That's really important to us. And so from like a centralization AI, if we talk about the hours we give back, is that where they can redeploy those hours? So, we have one of our standard resident surveys, and one of the questions is, my property manager knows my first name. You guys probably all have that one too. It's pretty much always our lowest score. Really? And it bugs me a lot. I want to change that. So in how to enhance it, I think that's our approach and thinking, and, how do you do it better?
Yeah, they got to utilize the time better. If we give it back to them, we can't waste it.
Right.
And I think that I was just talking yesterday about the same point that you were discussing, which is I think pre-pandemic, while a bit anecdotal, resident event turnouts were a little lower. They were starting to fall off a little bit. They were repetitive at times. We had some great ones, but the weekly or every other week kind of cadence wasn't as popular. Then you have 2.5 years where people are like, I didn't know I missed that. And they come back to it and they craved it. And so our connectivity in the last year and a half has been insane. Like we have turnouts. I mean, things cost more money, which is a great thing. I'm happy to pay more for resident events when people are showing up, and instead of having 8 boxes of pizza left over at the end of it. So for us, that was a huge point. And I think that the next iteration of that is the community involvement. So it's not just our property and where our assets sit, but how do we actually involve those folks in the community they operate in? So I think we always joke, like, in our world, it's like, how do we get hyper local? It's a buzz phrase as well, but what are we doing, right? So at the home office, we have initiatives that are culture initiatives that we're doing for our home office staff. And one thing that I've been pressing this year really hard with our team is, how do we move that initiative down to the site level and have those folks and our folks connect with that as well? So our traveling folks, they're in the field all the time, our operations support specialists, sales support specialists, have them go to these sites, engage in these give back days, these volunteer days with our site teams. And that to me is the next iteration of community involvement, because now we can also bring residents into that fold. And it's just one more way, again, that the time given back to them can be spent on things that matter.
Yeah. And I think everyone has said the same thing, like at ACC, like we're just getting into the beginning of looking at centralization and piloting some programs there, but really giving our team members that are in the field the time back to focus on those things that are most important to the residents.
By the way, if we've got some time left, I want to open it up to some questions from the audience. I want to dive in a little bit on culture and politics. It is an election year. We've got a lot of division and tension and anxiety within this country. We've seen a lot of things kind of become kinetic over the past couple of days on a lot of campuses. Mostly the Ivies and University of Michigan, Chapel Hill as well, and just kind of curious, with your folks on the ground, what kind of conversations are they having, about, their residents and is there are they giving you any feedback on, fears they may have or anything like that? And, how are you guys kind of preparing them? Hey, if an incident breaks out, our typical standard protocol is this, just remember it, are you guys having those kind of conversations? What's keeping you guys up at night when you think about these college campuses and how they're kind of the, microcosm of, what we see in the country at large, and how that may end up playing out this year?
It's a tough question, I think, for everybody in the room. Nobody's going to sit here and jump to the answer it, but I would say there's two parts of that, right? I think the physical operations are the first piece, right? So if something's happening in your market, what are you physically doing with your asset? Like, so is there things that we have to do, to your point, from protocol standpoint, to avoid further damage? And that's the baseline stuff. We have that in certain markets. I mean, we've had some unrest in certain markets in our portfolio that have forced us to create some of that. Minneapolis has been tough for us over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've had to create things we never thought we had to in terms of protocols for our people. But past that, it's the resident sentiment and market sentiment. And I think that boils down to communication. It's a very simple term, but ignoring it doesn't help. Ignoring it, not posting about it, you get tons of phone calls per day from either residents or guarantors and parents, and not telling them what's going on, what we're doing about it is the worst thing that you can do as an operator. So I think stating the facts, putting it out there, and not being incendiary. What I mean by that is you're not taking a political stance in those moments. You're simply broadcasting information. Absolutely. That's important. But also referring back to resources. The universities have way more resources than we'll ever have at our properties, and referring those students that may be experiencing something in that moment and knowing what those resources are and how to get them to the residents, that's important for us.
Gotcha.
Yeah, very well said. I don't have much to add other than I did query my staffs on this when I saw that question, and we really aren't hearing a lot of it in our offices. I guess it's not coming through because our markets that we're in, just it's not as impacted. But of course, I know that it's occurring, and I read all the articles, and I know Columbia University went online on Monday, to help dispel some of the activity. But anyway, yeah, we're not really hearing about it in our offices.
Talking about the Mental Health Advocacy Coalition, we've now gone through 2 cycles of surveys, and those index reports have come back, and I think I don't think they've necessarily provided a lot of things that were surprising. There are a couple of things that I think that may have been a little bit of a surprise, but I think it probably confirmed a lot of things that we were all thinking. And but one of the main reasons for the coalition coming together and putting that survey together was so that information could really help us with our Res Life programming and our training with employees on on mental health or mental wellness. Just kind of curious, want to kind of get feedback from you guys. How have you guys utilized that to enhance those programs and training?
Yeah.
Like naturally, you should go first.
Exactly.
So like you mentioned, Wes, we've been part of the Hi, How Are You project since 2019. And when we joined Hi, How Are You, we really put a focus on training like our student staff on how to help kind of remove the stigma around mental health and have productive conversations around that. And so since then, that has been a main focus at ACC. We are part of the founding coalition that actually does the survey. And so from there, we've taken that information and really just looked to see, one, evaluate what we're currently doing, making sure that we are meeting the needs of our residents, and then look for other ways in which we can enhance that as well. From there, we've learned that students, they feel connected to their residential communities, but they want more connection. And so looking at ways of how can we provide more connection for them. So that has been our focus.
It puts actual data behind anecdotal consensus. Like we had for years saying all of these things. To your point, we all knew it was going on, and we've socialized that in rooms and talked about it. But now that we have actual data, it can create investment. So when it costs money to do something, we can go back to a partner or internally in our home office and say, this makes sense. We want to put money here because obviously it's affecting our people, whether it's our resident base or our staff. And I think that just candidly, it is the last few years, if the pandemic brought anything good to student housing, it was the sharing of information amongst the major partners and really any partner in the space. That didn't exist like it did, in 2020, right? Yeah. Whether it was getting on calls then, talking about what we were all doing as an industry. And this is just another initiative or example of that, because the amount of folks in that call and the amount of people that care and the amount of people that are sharing information and what they're doing, forms, because it's better for the people that live at our communities, not necessarily better for us as a company, that is impactful. That was a really cool thing to come out of that.
Very grateful to ACC
Truly.
for spearheading this and allowing us all to come together, and we love our opportunity to be in it. I did bring some notes because I pulled our surveys, and we learned that 93% of our residents say that mental health is crucial and heavily impacts their daily lives. And so we've reminded our teams to do different things for our residents, like community connection and tailored mental health initiatives. So Beyond the resident relations type things that I talked about earlier, offering walk-in counseling days, hosting puppy play times, mini massages, and especially during things like finals week. We are also like daily well initiatives, daily well-being.
Let's dig into
initiatives.
puppy playtime for a second.
Puppy playtime. I know, like who doesn't want to play with a puppy?
How does that work? And do a lot of puppies end up just staying, or
Some get adopted. So, it's some of the adoption agencies, they'll come and bring the puppies to your property, and it's kind of a reciprocal thing. Our residents get a chance to interact, but hopefully puppies will get adopted as well. So
They become ESAs.
yeah.
For us.
Pet screening. I'll handle that.
Yeah, I was
for
going
us.
to say,
Yeah.
is pet screening?
Yeah. Yeah. And then like daily well-being initiatives. So writing positive notes on packages, the simple things like that, maybe spontaneous giveaways, providing a resource hub for counselors. And then one of the things I thought was interesting on our stats is 79% of our residents who responded indicated that music is their most engaged activity. And so, curating things around that, hosting music and open mic nights and things like that. So just, trying to do nothing that's really monumental. It's all simple and easy to be done, but it makes a positive impact.
How about for Tailwind? Anything?
Yeah, I think we're still have a lot to develop and build, as we're growing the company. And I think it goes back to, training our leaders and, you got to be careful. Property managers aren't counselors, and you don't want to cross that line, but creating that connectivity with the residents where, hey, maybe if something is going on, would they be comfortable walking into the office and talking about it? And, we do have some cool stories over the last few years where one of our property managers has helped a resident through a really difficult time and made a really positive impact. And, that's really what we're here for. We have the opportunity to impact, thousands of college students' lives and their journey. So we certainly have a lot to do still, as far as training our people on that and, providing resources, but certainly an important thing that is more and more prevalent, over the last several years.
I'm kind of curious, is there something more from, that survey that you guys feel like maybe it's the current data that's being gathered, but maybe it needs to be, based off of the tier of the school, or maybe HBCU versus a non-HBCU. Just kind of curious as to, has it opened up questions on, because, this always happens with data when we start looking at it, is we just start asking more questions. So, has there been other things that, as you've looked at that index report, that you're like, okay, well, can we ask this question next time? If you guys thought about that at all?
Yeah, so I think, Wes, when you talk about, HBCUs, I'll speak on that because, in the HBCU community, like mental health, it is a stigma, right? And it's not something that's talked about. And so I think that having this information is helpful for us when we go back to the universities and talk about ways in which we can help our students, right? And ways in which we can tailor programs to them to help them, because there has been such that stigma. And, if I talk about mental health and the challenges that I have, then there's something wrong with me, right? And so really being able to break that has been important for us. Like I talked about, our starting at Prairie View and me working at Prairie View and actually being a student there. When I was there 20-ish years ago, we didn't talk about mental health, but now actually being able to have those open conversations and helping our students there, and then they're able to go back and take that to their communities as well and help them as well.
Okay. Anybody else?
It was a good answer.
No, it was a great answer.
Well, guys, I want to open it up to the audience. If we got a few minutes, if any of you guys have questions. Over here.
If I may, I have a two-parter. I'd like to hear
And I'll have to repeat it just so we can get it on the audio, but go ahead.
for each of the panelists, looking at either your leadership team or your on-site staff team, what is your biggest need right now that you want to leverage technology for?
So what do you want to, so leadership, both on-site, corporate, what do you want to leverage? How do you want to leverage technology? How do you want to leverage technology?
A need that you need to leverage technology.
Just think anytime we can streamline operations, to free up the time again to focus on what matters most, the residents, I would like to do that.
I think on the corporate side and even on the onsite, just data automation, business intelligence, click button reporting versus, we still work in spreadsheets, Excel 90% of the time. And, it seems like there should be an opportunity to kill spreadsheets eventually where all the data is just instant, live, from an operational leasing, even on the investment side, asset management side. Just making sure that data is accurate. And I think that's where BI is, we're still trying to make sure it's funneled the right way. But
yeah, just to expand, the operations. So like we have KPIs, obviously everybody does that they manage by, but we have an internal dashboard where our teams can see how they're measuring to those KPIs. And so that's using technology like that to streamline the operations.
Good. I can say it. For us, I think one of the big focuses is building automation. So systems within our buildings that can help our team have predictive analytics on when to replace things. So it's a part of preventative maintenance, part of capital investment over time. As our properties age, what are we doing about that? So that's a focus of ours as we go forward. And how do we use that data to potentially impact future developments or acquisitions as well? What kind of money we're putting there?
Gotcha. Any other questions? Well, to our guests, thank you very much. Appreciate the time that you guys were able to spare for our audience and our sponsors. Thank you so much for being here and supporting what we're doing at Student Housing Insight. And with that being said, we'll get on to the conference.
Perfect. Thanks, Wes. Good job. That's great. Your team brought me this. Thank you.
Oh,
I was running out of fun too. I was like, damn.
Joking.